Now, a lot of times when we get cars on this show, we take them up into the curvy mountain roads. The Jeep or something like that, we go off-road, but something like this thing was meant for the American highway. Well, another episode of Jay Leno's Garage. I'm excited today because we have a 1961 Dodge Polara. Not an ordinary Dodge Polara, a highway patrol Dodge Polara with the police package on it, which is really cool. You know, there's so many people that come around, they want to show me a police car, a real 100% authentic police car, and then it's got the pillarless this, or it's just a car they've converted. This is the real thing, and these are really rare because these cars were just beaten to death. They were driven into the ground, and then they were sold off. And when we were kids, we loved to buy old police vehicles because you got, to quote Dan Aykroyd and the Blues Brothers, cop engine, cop transmission, cop brakes, you know, all the cool police stuff that you could put on your own car. But let's find out the story of this one. Let's meet Morgan Yates. Morgan, come on in. You're from the Auto Club, correct?
The Auto Club of Southern California.
Now,
Jay.
I say archivist, but you say...
Archivist.
Archivist,
yes.
All right. Archivist, sounds like somebody from Game of Thrones. Bring Archivist! Bring him in here and cut his head off.
The most powerful guy in the room.
Most powerful guy in the room. So, you know, people always think of the Auto Club as just kind of get your map and do all that. But you guys actually are real car enthusiasts. You guys restored this thing, didn't you?
We did, Jay. And what's notable about this, you talked about the police package. And CHP, their job was to patrol the freeways. Mm-hmm. And they knew the kind of equipment that they needed to do that. And it was embodied in 1961 with the Dodge Polara. It was a 122-inch wheelbase. But there was a problem, see, because Dodge, their police package was the Dodge Dart, and It was 118 inches on wheelbase. And 4 inches made a difference to the CHP.
Tell me about it.
And so what they did is they had some pull with Dodge, which was their preferred police package provider. And so Dodge said, okay, we're going to do this off the books. So they created the police package Polara for 1961. And CHP bought 1,200 of them.
Wow.
And that's a lot of cars, but you know, it's a big state. And as you said, they drive them into the ground.
Now, was it just California that used the Polara, or did other states use these as well?
As far as we know, the CHP was the only agency that got the 61 Dodge Polara police package.
Oh, wow. So this really is a rare car, isn't it?
It's so rare indeed that this is the one of only two that we know of that has been restored. And it is an original police car. It started out life with the police package. It wasn't a tribute or a clone.
Okay. Now, we'll meet the man who restored it in a few minutes. But tell us more about the history. Some of the, like the white steering wheel, that wasn't there just for style, was it?
No, it wasn't. And, you know, in a state like California where you get some real weather, some hot weather, anyone who's slid into that hot black vinyl and put their hands on a hot steering wheel on a 100-degree day knows that it's not very pleasant. And these cars were probably never under a roof. They were always in use. And so the CHP spec'd out a white steering wheel. It's actually a Plymouth 1957 steering wheel, and but that's what CHP wanted, and that's what they got.
And there was no air conditioning back then.
Just roll the windows down.
This is your air conditioning. You get a little vent window, could kind of blow something on the side of your face, but that was about it, yeah.
That's exactly right. Yeah, not a lot of creature comforts, but you know what? These police package cars were durable, and they were rugged, and they had to be because they were used so roughly.
And so how are the brakes different? Are they finned brake drums? What's
you know, what I can tell you about the brakes is that they were larger than a standard Polara. They just, when they were on the assembly line, they went and got some Chrysler brakes that were a little bit larger, and that's what made this thing what it was in terms of police package. So they just upsized the brakes.
And it's interesting, there's no partition between the front and the back in the day.
No, there wasn't, and I think you know, that comes on a few years later.
Yeah.
And so you're right. That was when I was a military policeman. We had Chevy Luminas in the early '90s, and we had that partition in between. And there was a good reason for having that.
And it was a lot different in '61. See, now when you get back in the back of the police car, the cops go, "Ooh, watch your head.
Watch your
Ooh,
head.
Be careful. Oh, be careful." Back then, get in that car. Yeah, that was a lot. It was a lot. It was a lot different.
It's still pretty Spartan back there.
Yeah, there's not much there. And what did these weigh? Do you know?
You know, I don't know exactly, but I know that with the big 383 engine and the frame was reinforced, it was going to be heavier than a standard Polara.
Oh, so they actually reinforced the frame as well.
They did. You know, that's all part of the police package. Everything that they could upgrade in terms of adding to the durability and ruggedness of the car, they did.
Now, I noticed this doesn't have the bumpers on the front, the way, you know, to push vehicles off the road.
Sure, we see those today,
Yeah.
and they had them in tow trucks back before this was built, but the CHP didn't really bring those in. They experimented with some different designs, and that started in the early 60s, so just after. So these cars may have, if they had still been in service, probably did get the push bumpers, but not at the outset.
It seems obvious now, but not so much then. It's an automatic transmission, correct? Because they had sticks.
They did have sticks, Jay, in police package cars, but they were being phased out for obvious reasons. It was one less thing that the officer had to worry about,
Right.
and you still had that performance with the automatic.
And it had the certified speedometer.
You see that right in the front,
Yeah.
and that's really that's an important aspect of this, because you did have people that were starting to say, well, how did you know I was going 95?
Right.
And the judges were starting to listen to that, and so as a response, the CHP said, well, okay, we need to dial in our speedometers and make them, you know, precision. That way, speeding tickets will hold up in court.
And did they lock on? Because I know the old motorcycles, they would have a red line, and the red line would stay at the highest speed. So when they pulled the guy over, I wasn't going 80. You'd bring him back, and he'd show you how fast he had to go to catch you.
There must have been some way to designate that. I'm not sure exactly how that worked, but yes, it would have been something like that.
Okay. So you're the historian, but you didn't do the actual restoration of the car, correct?
Nope, I just got to watch and provide some historical photographs and resources so that we could get the restoration correct.
Cool. Well, thank you very much. Let's meet Dave Skaien. He did the restoration of this. How you doing?
How are you, Jay?
Beautiful job.
Thank you.
Was this, when you found this, was this a lot more than you thought it was going to be? It always is, isn't it?
It was in pretty rough shape when we found it.
Now, were you looking for a 61, or you just happened to hear of a 61?
We just happened to hear of this 61.
Okay.
We'd found several,
Yeah.
and we ultimately decided this was the right one.
Okay. So what kind of shape was it in when you got it?
It was in incredibly bad shape. It was
Yeah.
intact,
Yeah.
but there was no floors in it. They were rotted out. The trunk was rotted out. The quarter panels were rotted out. It had been stored outside for many, many, many years.
Okay, when you drag it back to the auto club, when you go to whoever your boss is, what are you doing? Look at this thing. Find a better one. I mean, was there, because, you know, it's expensive to restore one of these, correct?
Well, yes, but you know, we relied upon the goodwill and the resources of many people to donate their time and materials to this project.
So kind of like Huck Finn painting the fence, that kind of deal.
Exactly
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Okay. You're going to be part of something. Yeah.
That's absolutely correct.
I got to try that.
You know, in fact, many of the parts that are on this car were provided to us because of that exact fact.
Is that right?
Absolutely. Things like that Jones Motorola speedometer, the round one that's sticking up behind the steering wheel.
The certified one we talked about.
Well, there's two certified speedometers.
Oh, there are?
There's the factory certified speedometer, which is the original one, the horizontal one on the dash. And then there's the round one mounted there in the front.
Okay.
That Jones Motorola round speedometer was donated to us by a gentleman who had it in his personal possession for more than 25 years and wasn't willing to let it go for any amount of money to anybody. And he made it available to us because it was the Auto Club and because it was this vehicle for posterity.
Oh, that's nice. Now, do you get a lot of old highway patrol guys? Well, I got one of them radios sitting in my garage. You know, I mean, was there a lot of that too?
Some of that. In fact, we found the radio in the trunk much from the same means. Another retired highway patrol gentleman who'd had the radio in his possession for years and years and years and turned it over to us because of the project.
Well, let's open the hood. Let's show us what we have here.
All right.
Okay, now, begs the question, I've got a 61 Chrysler 300G there, and that has the 413 engine in it. Did they ever build these with 413s, or why the 383 over the 413?
This was the engine that the CHP wanted in this vehicle in '61. I believe in prior years they had run the 413, But this was the engine of choice in '61.
So I guess they needed gas mileage as well as, because the 413, it just drinks gas with 2 carburetors on it. That was 375 horsepower. And this is what, about 330, 325, he said?
Yeah, I think the factory published 325. When we did the engine work on the dyno, it actually made 332 horsepower
Wow.
and 406 foot-pounds of torque.
And is it a different carburetor than the normal?
This is a CHP spec Carter carburetor.
Okay.
This particular one is 525 CFM and was mandated by the CHP for use on this motor.
Okay, so they didn't have the biggest carburetor available. They needed something that got pretty good mileage too, huh?
That's correct. There is one unique feature about the engine that is relevant to the 413, and that's the camshaft. The camshaft that's in this particular engine is the high-performance dual 4-barrel camshaft out of the 413. And again, that was CHP-specific request
Oh, that's
for this
interesting.
engine.
Now, does this run on premium fuel or regular grade fuel?
It runs on premium for sure. It's 10.3 to 1 compression.
Wow. Because nowadays, I think all police cars have to run on
Regular gas.
regular gasoline. But I guess the highway patrol for high-speed use, and yeah, you needed premium fuel. And
Absolutely.
you got the original type battery here as well, oil filter, single master cylinder.
That filter that you just touched is actually the transmission filter.
Oh, it's transmission
That
filter,
was
okay.
specified by the CHP as an
Okay.
add-on. They wanted it to have an extra filter so that it was doing a better job of filtering particulate, and it provided extra fluid to keep the transmission cool for sustained high-speed runs.
And it has a transmission cooler, doesn't it?
It does not have a cooler in the
does it?
front. Only that filter right there serves as the cooler and the filter.
Oh, that serves as a cooler. Well, I'm surprised that they call it a cooler because it's not finned or anything.
I agree. I think it was
Okay.
really more about the additional
So
capacity.
you got an extra quart, maybe. huh?
Yeah, exactly right.
Okay. Very cool.
Some of the other things that are unique to this build is the alternator. This
Yeah, that's
is,
a big alternator, isn't it?
This is actually a Lease Neville alternator. It's a 60 amp dual groove pulley, and this was necessary because when you keyed the radio, when you keyed the mic for the radio,
Yeah.
it pulled 30 amps out of the alternator
Wow.
just keying the microphone. So it was a needed feature.
Plus, most cars, I don't know, I'm not sure about Chrysler cars, they ran generators. I know Mustang still had a generator even as late as '64. The early Mustangs were generator cars. The alternator didn't come later. Were Chrysler always alternators?
This car actually came delivered from Chrysler with an early generator and this alternator in the trunk
Oh,
with
okay.
the bracketry that went with it. And it
Okay.
was upfit by the at the Sacramento EVOC facility where they do all the upfitting for the cars.
Now, the radiator looks to me to be a stock radiator. I know they used to have what they called a tropical package for a lot of cars, had a bigger, thicker radiator. I'm surprised because of all the desert work. Is that the bigger radiator?
That is a bigger radiator.
Oh, okay. Maybe it's just my eyes. Okay.
And you might be surprised to know that to some, they might look at that radiator cap and think that radiator cap is incorrect. And in fact, it is not. That was mandated by the CHP that it had a lever vent radiator cap, and the stainless steel worm drive hose clamps were also upfitted by the CHP.
Wow. Now, does the CHP still do that? I mean, it sounds like they have a couple of real car guys at the CHP that knew camshafts and everything else. Nowadays, it seems like the manufacturer just delivers a vehicle. But is it still the same? They go over all the...
I believe they do. I believe the CHP still has a fair amount of influence, and they do an awful lot of very nice work up in Sacramento at their EVOC facility where they build out these cars.
Now, on the brakes, do they use the sintered metal?
Yeah, and they're 12 inch as opposed to 11.
Okay.
And they have about 255 or 258 swept inches of brake surface, as opposed to the stock car has about 230.
Wow, okay. Now, let's close the hood.
Sure.
Something I just realized, and I've been looking at this car for, 15 minutes now. No light bar.
Correct.
Did they patrol without the light bar?
Correct. This is its in-service light package right now. Clear on the right, red on the left, and then in the back on the rear package tray is one red and one amber light.
Now, was this because the light bars at that point stuck up this much and they were heavy, and it really took, 10, 15 miles an hour off the top speed?
It could potentially take more, I would imagine.
Yeah. So is that why? Because the high speed?
I believe that's true, but I don't know that to be factual.
And how often would these cars go over 100 miles an hour? Was it fairly common back in the day?
I believe so. In fact, in speaking with one of the resources we used for this build, a retired CHP officer who was privy to the original build information, The expectation from the CHP was that this car could sustain 100 miles an hour for an hour in 100-degree heat. And that was the baseline by which they expected the cars to perform.
You know, these would be a great ad for the Mercury, was it the Comet? 100,000 miles at 100 miles an hour. And they showed, I think they did Daytona, 100,000 miles, 100 miles an hour. Yeah, they used to play that song constantly when I was a kid. I used to hear it all the time.
It's marketing genius because we're talking about it now in 2016.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, the basic threadbare, kind of cheapest vinyl, no lumbar support, no nothing on these seats. No
That's
electric
correct.
seats, no nothing. And it has roll-up windows.
Absolutely.
No air conditioning.
No air.
But
no power steering, no power brakes.
Interesting, no shotgun. I mean, now police cars, all kinds of weaponry. I mean, they even have the doors that can take bullets and everything, whereas this is nothing special in here, is there?
Right, so a gun rack and the partition were not mandatory build-outs back then, so some cars had those features, many cars did not. This one did not have a gun rack or a partition. And
anything towards the rear of the vehicle that's different? No, that's all seems to be pretty stock, doesn't it? Yeah.
Well, it has a 6-leaf spring stack as a pursuit vehicle, as opposed to a 5-leaf spring stack.
Oh, okay, all right. So a little heavy-duty suspension. You know what's funny? I know the 62 Dodge Dart police car was considered the ugliest police car of all time. And when I look at this at other Chrysler products like the 61 300G or whatever, not the prettiest car. What do you think?
Well, I agree with you. I think this car was probably one of the ugliest cars I'd ever seen when we started this project. It's grown on me since then considerably, and I like it now, but it's not great.
Well, you know, when you see one of these, like that picture you saw earlier, all rusted out, they look like mastodons lying in some sort of tar pit, you know, because the chrome is all gutted and it's dented and it's
Pitted.
rusted. But, yeah, but when you shine them up and take them out, you go, oh, it's not so. I mean, I like this treatment here. This is actually kind of George Jetson-y. That has a real sort of style to it. It's just, it looks like there are so many things happening on the body. Those pontoons kind of in the front, and then you have a louvered hood, but they're not louvers, they're just fake louvers, so they don't let any air out.
That's right.
So why put fake louvers? It didn't make any sense. But that was the styling of the day. Let's open the trunk and see. Now this looks like a family of 4 could live here comfortably.
I think we measured it, and 5 might actually fit.
Look at that. Okay. Boy, that's amazing.
That's a beautiful trunk, isn't it?
And how many perps could you stick in this, really? Just get in there, you know, man. And that's, you got the original rubber mat and everything, huh?
And the original cardboard interior.
Right.
Some of these things were incredibly challenging to find at this point in time, but we were lucky enough to find those things. And that radio was another one of the items that was made available to us because of this project.
Right.
And the beauty of that radio is that we actually employed a General Electric technician who worked on those radios in the 60s, who was an original service tech. He came to work for us, and he's retired now, and he rebuilt that radio for us himself. So that was actually rebuilt by an original radio tech.
And that probably weighs 35 pounds.
It might weigh more than that. It might weigh 70 or more pounds.
70, 80 pounds. But what I'm saying is, my iPhone has probably 100 times the power of that thing, isn't it?
I would imagine as far as features.
Yeah, yeah.
But it wouldn't transmit the amount of energy that does. That thing will produce 50 amps totally. It pulls 30 amps, like I said, when you key the mic.
Okay. Well, pretty cool. Can we take this thing for a ride?
Absolutely.
Let's take this thing out on the highway and see if we can catch some speeders.
Let's do it.
It looks contemporary. Yeah. Now, a lot of times when we get cars on this show, we take them up into the curvy mountain roads. The Jeep or something like that, we go off-road. But something like this thing was meant for the American highway. Wow, it's got good pickup. Between 50 and 70, that's where it wants to be. So we are going a certified 71 miles an hour. Boy, this thing cruises nicely, and it's got good pickup. Yeah. See, it's interesting. Now, the speedometer in the car says 72 miles an hour, but the certified says 65.
I'd go with the Jones Motorola.
Yeah. You know where Motorola comes from?
Tell me.
Well, when they first started putting radios in cars, the most popular form of entertainment was the Victrola,
Yes.
because people could play records at home. And the idea, you could play records in your motor or your car. So it became Motorola.
Okay.
So Motorola is a variation of Victrola.
Victrola.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Then they had the jukebox, the Rockola. I mean, Ola was a big deal. But you know, this thing actually drives very nice. I like the firmer suspension. Wow, and that kickdown is really good. When you realize this car is 50 years old, and 50 years from when this was built would have been what, 1911?
Yep.
I mean, it's amazing. When you think about it, a lot of people who drove these cars were born in the 1800s. Like, here's a question for you. Who's the first American president born in the 20th century?
Ooh, I don't know if I know that.
You'll never guess.
Tell me.
John F. Kennedy.
You know, that was going to be my guess.
Oh,
I should have went for it.
You can't say that was going to be your guess.
I swear it was going to be my guess.
Then it should have been your guess.
I agree.
I was going to guess that. Oh, yeah. Oh, I would have picked that lottery number. Yeah.
I would have.
Yeah. But I like it when you step on it. The thing I liked about the way you restored it, you don't step on it and it shake and rattle and blows a bunch of blue smoke out the back. I mean, it's not a show car. It really runs like a proper vehicle should. Very nice. Because it's so, not that it's easy to do cosmetics, but a lot of people just do cosmetics and don't, you know, they're worried about cracking the paint on the frame, so they don't tighten the motor mounts, they don't do any of that. And you get in the cars and they start doing this down the highway. Whereas this thing goes good.
This is the first time it's ever been on the freeway.
Is it?
Yeah.
It seems happy in its natural habitat. It wants to run. Kicks down nicely. This thing is great. You know, at 323 gear, it kicks down at 65 miles an hour. Guys would spend 8 hours, 10 hours a day in these things, wouldn't they?
Absolutely.
Just cruising the freeway.
In the dead of summer up on the 5
Dead
freeway.
of summer, there were no cell phones. You broke down, that was it. You just waited for somebody, some good Samaritan to come along.
The sound nobody in a muscle car wanted to hear in the late 60s.
I know. I guess Highway Patrol has pretty much always been Chrysler, isn't it?
I believe there was a long stretch when they used Chrysler products.
Yeah.
I think in the 40s they were using GM products, maybe Buicks for a while.
Yeah, well, I'm talking mostly late model. You know, when I first came to California, it was the big 440.
Absolutely.
That was a huge car.
Absolutely.
Oh my God, that thing was big.
And big power.
Yeah.
Feels like it'd run all day like this, don't you think?
Yeah, I think it probably could. You know, if I blindfolded someone and put them in this car, they would think they're in a modern car.
I think that's a fair assessment. I agree.
I mean, it doesn't run, you know, oddly, and it's certainly got more than enough power.
And it's comfortable.
Yeah. Now, this has got a beautiful paint job. Was the paint job this good back in the day?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. I mean, because it was just sort of quickie in and out, you know.
Are these your tire marks?
No. Which I'd like to claim them. Tell us about this. This is the certified police speedometer, right?
Yeah, made by Jones Motorola Corporation.
Yeah.
Very rare. Took us a long time to find that.
Yeah. Now look at the difference between the factory speedometer is reading close to 50, and this is only 43. So
we did not service that speedometer when we got it.
Yeah.
So it could be a little bit off. I'm not sure which one's off.
You got the original radio.
Absolutely, and it works.
Now you mentioned, tell us about the dash, because you say it's more of a satin finish on the original.
Correct. The whole dash should look like this right here.
Right.
Instead of gloss like this. But we made a decision for aesthetics to make it gloss like the exterior.
Right, right. And of course the white steering wheel, because it didn't absorb heat like the black one did.
Correct.
And this panel is obviously different. That's where the radio would have gone, correct? The factory radio.
Correct.
Yeah.
And this was upfitted by the CHP in Motor Services in Sacramento.
And you couldn't even get in a fight with the other guy, look, because this car's so wide.
That's right.
You couldn't even punch him in the face. Look at that.
You could fit 4 wide in here.
Yeah.
4 more in the trunk.
But it must have been crazy with guys in that back seat kicking and screaming with no divider there. And you can feel the heat on your knees from the windshield. I mean, you get some blowing in here, but
There's no UV protection from that windshield
no,
at all.
no.
Unlike a modern automobile.
Yeah. Well, this works pretty good, actually. Look at that. That blows all kinds of cool air in.
This is what you call 250 air right here.
Yeah. Look at that. This blows all kinds of air. Look at that. Fantastic. And of course, that's your lights, right?
Mm-hmm.
And your siren.
Yep.
What is that jack for?
I believe that jack was for an external PA.
Oh, okay.
You can see the sunlight backlighting your speedometer there.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the first car I've ever saw that had a clear back to the speedometer.
Yeah,
where it was
I've
lit
never
with the
seen
sun.
that either, yeah. Morgan looks worried. Want to thank Morgan and Dave from the Auto Club. Boy, this is the first time this thing has ever been on the highway. They just finished the restoration, so thanks for letting us help do the shakedown cruise. And nothing shook down. It ran fine. I was surprised at how much power it had, actually. It's pretty quick. This thing was a lot of fun. So, see, the Auto Club is not just about maps and stuff now. They're fixing up cars. They're restoring cars. It's pretty cool. Guys, thank you. Morgan, thank you very much.
Thanks, Jay.
Check out the Auto Club, you guys. Pretty cool. See you next week.
Mm-hmm.